We just got the official numbers for the first day of trading on the Bitwise XRP ETF, and guys, these are some monster numbers. In this video, I want to talk about that as well as address why isn't this having an impact on the price of XRP? Despite all this positive momentum, the price of XRP is still going downwards. In this video, we're going to talk about that as well as I'm going to show you a brand new interview with David Schwartz at the end of the video. Guys, please stick around for that. When David Schwartz talks, it's best to listen up. It's going to be impossible to leave this video right now bearish after listening to what David Schwartz has to say. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. Thank you to everyone who takes the time to like these videos and subscribe to the channel. Guys, these two simple things really do help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a place to buy some XRP, make sure to check out my favorite exchange uphold down in the description of this video. That said, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So guys, like I said in the intro, we just got the official day one numbers from the Bitwise XRP ETF, ticker XRP. Like I said, I think that's a fantastic ticker. Good for them for claiming that, and I'm surprised so many large financial institutions missed out on that opportunity. But let's take a look at some of the initial numbers because they are huge. It looks like the day one numbers for the XRP Bitwise ETF was 107 million in inflows. Now, this is absolutely phenomenal. These are some huge starts to the XRP ETFs. And guys, this made it all the way to CNBC, where Bitwise was actually on CNBC educating their audience on XRP. One of the things I talked about as an unofficial, really positive thing from these ETFs was the publicity associated with them. The credibility towards XRP. These ETFs are bringing XRP mainstream, bringing them to the TradFi world. And suddenly XRP is being legitimized in a way that it's never been legitimized before. Now, technically, is XRP any more legit than it was before these ETFs? Absolutely not. But when it comes to public perception, this is absolutely monstrous. And guys, we are just at the start of this because very soon, we are about to see Franklin Templeton, a $1.4 trillion manager, and Grayscale step into the arena. Now, these are two of the big boys stepping into the XRP ETF conversation. And guys, these are just going to keep hitting the news, just keep hitting the news cycle, keep getting those interviews, keep going on CNBC, blasting XRP to the masses, bringing it to every single person globally. Now, this is super exciting stuff, but I know a lot of people are sitting back and saying, how could you have all this positive momentum? How could you have all these positive indications and not have XRP going up? If we take a look at the XRP price chart, we can see we are still hanging on by a thread, essentially on the floor of something potentially pretty scary. Now, right now, XRP is kind of catching support. It's kind of hanging on to here. We haven't seen any strong bounce yet. It's just trading right at this final last support that we have to hold XRP up. And a lot of people are sitting there asking, how in the world with these ETFs going live, how are we not seeing XRP appreciating with their rollout? And there's a couple points that I have to make here. The first one being, guys, at the end of the day, this market just is not sophisticated at all. The cryptocurrency market is made up by people who don't even understand this technology. And I point it out all the time on this channel, but at the end of the day, how can you expect people to understand this market and for the market to trade rationally when the largest figureheads in this industry still claim they don't understand XRP? So the market is always going to have a sense of irrationalness to it. But the other thing you have to pay attention to is the rest of the cryptocurrency market is selling off a lot harder than XRP right now. Typically, when Bitcoin sells off, XRP is down close to twice as much. So the fact that XRP is actually trading pretty much in line with Bitcoin, and we can take a look at that, just taking a look at the Bitcoin to XRP price chart, we can see that over the course of this launch, XRP has actually really almost ascended up against Bitcoin over the last couple of days and really held parity rather than descending against Bitcoin. That there's a very good indication that that's the ETF volume at work right there, keeping XRP up and not falling as much as it normally might against something like Bitcoin. But guys, at the end of the day, the most important thing you need to take away from this is that XRP hasn't changed. You can just buy it for cheaper now. It's Black Friday. Happy Black Friday, right? You get the XRP deals rolling in. Look, at the end of the day, XRP is not changing one bit. And if you have any kind of conviction on XRP over the long run, cheaper prices shouldn't change anything. It should be totally obvious that the market is completely irrational right now. Why? Because it's staring you in the face. It's screaming at you that it's being irrational. How could you have these ETFs going live and the market reacting negatively to it? At the end of the day, you just need to realize that you're probably smarter than the market in the short term. You probably understand things that are way more important than what the market's freaking out about. That's just how markets work. And you need to accept that. Too many people zoom into a price chart and say, you know what? I must be wrong, right? I must be reading this incorrect. There must be something going on with XRP that I'm not aware of. Things must be bad because the price is going down. That's not how markets work. Your thesis will be proved over the long run, but in the short run, it's just noise. Certain things are going to impact this market that are absolutely out of any sign or any realm of rationality. That's not going to change. That's how markets work. That was the case with Google. That was the case with Apple. That was the case with Amazon. They traded completely outside of their fundamentals for so many different periods of time. But guess what? The market figures it out over the long run. And if you're getting too emotional out of these short-term moves, you're totally forgetting that the market is not supposed to be acting rationally in short orders. Instead, it's going to act emotionally over short periods of time. But over the long run, these things sort themselves out. So if you're feeling bearish on XRP and you were bullish when XRP was at $3, you really need to take a step back and think to yourself, what has changed with XRP since it was at $3? And if you can't figure out any change, then the problem isn't with the asset. Instead, the problem is your own emotions have changed without any change in your underlying thesis. Those are the kinds of things that can get you in trouble. And I really spend a lot of time on this because it's so important to realize. If you constantly think the market is the dictator of truth in the short term, you're going to always feel like you're on the wrong side of things or you're making the wrong decision. But if you realize that in the short term, the market is constantly getting it wrong, and over the long run, right, if you're right, those things will be proven out, then you look at a time like this and just laugh and say the market doesn't get it. But one day it will. And when the market doesn't get it, guys, that's your opportunity to prove the market wrong and take advantage of its mispricing. During COVID, should the entire stock market have dropped 50%? Should you have been able to buy stocks for 50% off one day later? Absolutely not. But guess what? You were able to, because the market got it incorrect. It opened up an opportunity for people to capitalize on it and prove the market wrong. It's no different than what we're watching right here. Guys, with that said, I want to finish this video off and play you a brand new David Schwartz interview. Guys, I always say when David talks, it is so important to listen up. Guys, a lot of people have questions about XRP's utility. I think this interview right here should put that all to bed. Do your best. Listen up to this entire thing because, guys, a lot of you give me so much credit for the things I talk about XRP, and I could not be more grateful for that. Seriously, the position I've been put in for making these videos and just giving my thoughts about the market has been incredible. But really, all of my wisdom, all of my knowledge comes from one person, and that's the speaker in this video right here. So listen up closely because this is going to tell you all you need to know about what's coming. Thank you, and for now, Mickle out.
Interest around XRP and why investors are kind of focusing on it now and sort of what the value prop is here. David, from your perspective, what would you say is the single most important investment thesis for XRP? I've heard for many years that it is, it's the speed, it's the cost, it's the settlement mechanism for cross-border payments. That's sort of what the token is known for. Would you say it's one of those, or is it something else that distinguishes XRP from Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana?
I think XRP occupies a unique niche kind of between Bitcoin and Ethereum. XRP is the first blockchain built on any, that wasn't a clone of Bitcoin or Bitcoin itself, dates back to 2012. Doesn't use proof of work. It uses what we now call proof of association. It was the first ledger, to have tokenized assets at the time called issued assets used for things like stable coins. It has a native decentralized exchange to allow people to move between assets. I think the value proposition of the XRP ledger for XRP is a curated set of financial primitives. So rather than the sort of free-for-all of platforms with smart contracts or the very, very limited functionality of something like Bitcoin, XRP, the XRP ledger has a set of financial primitives to provide, useful services. We see it as a public good. We see it as something that you sort of can't partition off or own. And these features include things like escrow, decentralized identifiers, decentralized exchange, and so on. And so it's a platform for enterprises to do business.
Hmm. Can you describe some of the other use cases, I guess, aside from making cross-border payments faster and cheaper, I guess, aside from the financial side of things, the payment side of things, some of these other use cases on the XRP ledger that are requiring the token itself?
So XRP has a unique position on the XRP ledger. It's the only asset that you can use to pay fees. It's the only asset that everyone can hold. It's the only asset without a counterparty. It's used as a bridge asset when two tokens don't have a direct trading pair. So if you're trading between two assets where there aren't a whole bunch of people who want to trade in the other direction, the network will automatically route the trade through XRP to improve speed or pricing. You don't necessarily see it as a user, but XRP does work behind the scenes to make those markets more efficient. And you see that as an XRP holder in the form of increased liquidity and increased ability to trade. There's settlement for tokenized assets like real world assets and stablecoins. They frequently need a neutral asset to settle between them. XRP acts as that settlement layer, making exchange between these assets smoother and more cost effective. And it's not tied to any jurisdiction. So, it can be held, it can easily be acquired and held by anybody versus stablecoins, which have ties to jurisdictions. So XRP provides liquidity across pairs on the DEX and order books. And then there's also cross-chain liquidity, like with the XRPL EVM sidechain and cross-chain protocols like Axelar provides. So XRP can be used in other ecosystems as collateral, as liquidity. So there's a broad range in multi-chain DeFi. And I think what we're starting to see, growing in newer use cases around the permission DEX for institutional trading. So institutions can trade on a DEX while still meeting their compliance obligations, settling directly on the ledger, with the ledger providing liquidity and settlement. And then the lending protocol. One of the most key TradFi functions is being able to lend and borrow money. And I think it's interesting as a lender, particularly because it gives you the ability to get a reasonable return for an investment of capital. XRP can be used for collateral because it's fast, low cost, and native, and it's likely to be one of the more commonly used options. But the protocol will support, using other assets.
Hmm. So you see more demand as the demand from institutional investors perhaps rises through the ETFs. Do you see that affecting the role of XRP on the ledger, perhaps just being used more, and perhaps used more for collateral in these more traditional financial vehicle type ways?
I definitely think so. I think we're, in the early stages of DeFi, most of the use cases were focused around the speculative trading of digital assets, which isn't, which it's a good thing, but it's nothing compared to the whole TradFi space. And so I think as we bring these institutional use cases into the ecosystem and onto the ledger, you're going to see that kind of growth of the use of XRP.
Hmm. And are there any metrics that institutional investors can use to track the utility of XRP?
Well, I think the big one is, the market cap is obviously a huge metric currently, like $127 billion. I think looking at adoption by institutions for real world assets, companies like Guggenheim Treasury Services, Ondo Finance, Aberdeen, Franklin, the number of transactions processed is something like 4 billion transactions that the XRP ledger has processed, settlement speed, which is just a couple of seconds. The number of new users coming onto XRP ledger, I think 500,000 new users brought in this year alone just from Zaman, which is just one wallet platform. And then I think we're going to be able to see, like, how do the ETFs do? How do companies like Evernorth and the digital asset treasury companies do? I think those metrics are going to be, is there institutional interest? Is there growth? And so I think, and then the growth of DeFi ecosystems on the XRP ledger, like Uphold, Axelar, Doppler, and those other companies to see. The number of tokenized real world assets. The XRP ledger just broke into the top 10 platforms for tokenized real world assets. And so we'll see all those metrics.